let's see how to create and use lists in Python. So I'm just going to create a list and put it in a variable named numbers. I like to make all of my list variable names plural to indicate that they're a list. They're holding multiple values. So it's going to be real generic, though. I'm just going to call it numbers. And I'm going to set it equal to some square brackets. Now I can create an empty list just like this, and then I can use it for various things. I could ask, what is the length of this list? And I'm going to use the len function. It's just abbreviated length. And I put numbers inside the parentheses. And then if I print out length, it's going to tell me that the length is 0 because there's nothing inside the list. So there's the 0 right there. So let's add some things to the list before I print the length. So I can use append. So I'll say numbers.append to add a number to the list. And then we'll print it out. And now the length should be 1 because I've put one item in the list. Okay, now suppose we also print out the list itself. So it printed out the length of the list as 1, and then it printed the list right here, numbers, and it's just bracket 6, as if I had just put a 6 inside the brackets here. And that's actually the other thing that we can do. Suppose I already know that I want particular numbers in my list. I'm just going to put some random numbers in the list, and now let's run it again. So as you can see, when it prints out the list, it prints out 8, 2, 65, 1, just like that. And I still appended that 6. And when you append, you add whatever information you're putting in the list at the very end of the list right there. And the length prints out as 5 because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values in the list. Now this next part might actually surprise you a little bit. Suppose we want to print out just a particular number from the list. So let's see, I'm going to get rid of length here. So what I'm about to do is print a number from the list that's indexed with the number 1. So when we use the name of the list followed by square brackets with a number in between, a whole number, we're indexing a value from the list. An index is just a number that refers to a location. It's very much like the number in your street address, right? You know, the house next to you probably has the next odd or even number up from you. All right, now this might have surprised you a little bit. So we're still printing the list right here, but when I printed numbers bracket 1, it printed the number 2 right there. And you may have expected it to print the number 8. However, indexing for lists starts at 0. So when I print numbers bracket 0, that gives me the first item in the list. So the first item is indexed with 0, the second is indexed with 1, the third item is indexed with 2, so this should print 65. There we go. Next number should be 1. There it is. And then lastly, we'll print the 6 right there. And what happens if I try and print the next number that's outside? There's no fifth number here, or rather, this is actually the 6th number. Because there's only 5 numbers in my list, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's no 5. So we get an error, and this is a very, very common error to get with lists. It's called an index error. It says list index out of range. And that happens when you pass in an index that is too big for your list. Now I will actually mention very briefly that you can put in negative numbers, and this will do something kind of neat. So you'll notice it printed out 6. If you put in -1, it'll print the last number in the list. If you print in -2, it will print the second to last number. So this will print 1. And you can sort of go backward through your list with negative numbers. There's the 1 printed out. So we saw that we could create a list that has some initial values in it. We could also create an empty list, and we can just append different values to the list as we like. So there's our new list where I appended 6 at the end, and then 5 at the end, and then 1 at the end. So append always puts things at the end. Suppose you want to put something into the middle of your list. Well, if you want to do that, you can use insert. And you need to give insert two pieces of information. The first thing you want to do in the parentheses for insert is put the location of the value that you want to put in. So I'm going to use location 1, and I'm going to put in the value 888. Now the current value at index 1 is 5. So what's going to happen is, since I'm trying to put a value at index 1, what's going to happen is the value at index 1 and all the values to the right are going to be pushed over. So you'll see it's going to be 6, 888, 5, and then 1, right? So 888 gets put at index 1, and everything after it, including the value that was previously at 1, just gets pushed over to the right. If I put a value at 0, that's going to put -4 at the very start and push all the other values further to the right. So there we go, right there. So I'm going to back this up for a second and go back to where we just had some numbers put in our list at the very start when we created our list. Now suppose I want to change one of these numbers. I just want that 5 right there. I want that to be a 6. So what I can do is I can say numbers bracket 1, and that 1 is the index of 5 again, and I can set it equal to 6. The same way that as if I had a variable named x and set it equal to 5, I could change it to 6 by saying x equals 6. Now, another thing that I can do is I can set the value in the list at index 1 to a different value in the list. So I could say numbers 1 now equals numbers 0. And what's going to happen is it's going to take the value of number 0, which is 8, and it's going to copy that over top of the value at 5. So it's going to replace the value at 5 with 8. So now when I run this, I should have 2 8s right at the start. 8, 8, 10, 7. Suppose I want to delete a number from my list. Suppose I'm sick of 10 being in this list. I want to get rid of it. Well, there's the word del for delete. And then you don't even need parentheses on this one. You can just say numbers and then the index of what you want to delete. So 0, 1, 2, this will get rid of 10 from my list. And there we have it right there. Suppose I want to swap 2 items in my list. Suppose I want to swap the 8 and the 7. I want to put 7 at the start. This might actually be a little bit trickier than you think. So you can't just say numbers 0, that's in the first position here, equals numbers 3, that's the position of the 7, and then the same thing but reversed, right? Then numbers 3 equals numbers 0. This makes a certain amount of sense, right? It says that the first location now equals the value of this location over here, so that should put the 7 at the start. And then this next line says that this last location, the location right here, equals the number, the value at 0, which is 8, except it's not 8 because we just copied 7 into that location. So now they're both going to be 7 because we copied 7 into both locations. Right? So see the 2 7s there at the start and at the end. What we need to do is create a temporary variable. I typically call these temp. And we need to say, what's the original value at 0? Because this line of code right here is going to erase that original value. It's going to copy the value at location 3 index, which is the last location, the 4th location, into location 0. So before we do that, we want a copy of the value at location 0. So here we're going to get a copy, and then we can still use this line, and this line is going to copy the 7 into that first position where the 8 is located, and then instead of copying the value at location 0, which is now 7, we're going to copy over temp. So this should swap our 8 and our 7. And there we go. We swapped them. Now suppose I'm not sure what kind of values I want in my list. I'd like some random numbers. So I can go ahead and import random. And I want 10 random numbers in my list, just arbitrarily. So I'm going to create an empty list, just numbers equals square brackets that are facing each other. And then I'm going to use a for loop and say for I in range 10. So this loop is going to repeat 10 times. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say numbers.append, and I'm going to put in a random number, random.randint, and I'll just grab a number between 0 and 10. So I'm going to get rid of some of the code I had before, just so we have this simple code right here. And we see that we've got 10 random numbers between 0 and 10 in our list. And it was just that easy using a for loop and append to put in a bunch of random values into our list. And then we could use those values, right? We can swap the locations of values. We could say, I really want the 5th value to be 9. Is going to be 9 right there. Now suppose I print my list of numbers or suppose I just have my list of numbers and I don't like the numbers that I got. I want to erase this and get some different numbers. If you want to erase an entire list, all you need to do is set that list equal to empty brackets again, and we'll be erased back to where we start. So now when I print this, we're not going to see any numbers in it. And there it is right there, our empty list.